1 minute to air. The live stream has started. There will be no more time cues after this point.
For our repaving program. We'll be talking about all of our paving projects for the year. So thank y'all for being here, and we look forward to your questions. Wait 1 minute. Wait until actually 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock. Yeah. She told me. She told you to wait until 7. Okay. Told her to wait until 7. Because she's going to broadcast it. All right. Like Clint just said, thanks everybody for coming. This is the annual Pavement Program meeting for the City of Durham Department of Public Works. Go ahead and introduce yourself. I'm getting there. So first off, just a presentation overview. As far as speakers are concerned, my name is Tyler Cloutier. I'm a principal engineer for the City of Durham. This is my boss, Clint Blackburn. He's the contract supervisor for the Public Works Department for the City of Durham. We also have our contractors, Tim Herst and Matt May of Slurry. Matt May will be talking later. We also have Nick Beach, Cornelius Cheatham, and Matt McCullough for Carolina Sunrock, and Tasha Johnson is also in attendance. So general overview of the pavement management program is our goal is to use variety methods to extend our life cycle of our pavement to hopefully 50 years while saving the City of Durham money over the course of its life cycle. To begin, we're going to start with ST 326, Unpaved Roads 2023. After each one of these projects, we will have a question and answer session. There's a microphone back there if you're uncomfortable with getting on the screen. There's also a microphone up here if you would like to stand up and ask your question. It's all being recorded on YouTube. Next, we'll get into ST 324, Street Repairs and Repaving, which is our mill and overlay. And then next, we'll get into ST 325, Pavement Preservation 2023, which Matt May will touch on and we'll touch on more later. And if there's questions unrelated to these three projects, please save them for the end. We'll have a general Q&A. All right. So first, we have ST 326 Unpaved Roads for this year. It is essentially us repaving all gravel roads or unpaved roads within the City of Durham. We get an annual allotment from the City Council. It is in its third year of funding, and we will be paving 16 gravel roads this year. We have it broken down on the website. Street name, from to intersection, all of them are gravel. We have approximately 16 and a half miles left of gravel road left in the City of Durham to pave. This is the vicinity map. All three of these projects have a map on the web pages that I'll show you how to get to in a second. This is the ST 326 map for this year. As you can see, we are in the northeast part of Durham. All the red streets are labeled with its name, and those are the streets that we are planning on repaving for this year. Also, the colors denoted on this map are the PAC districts. Project information, our contractor for lowest bid was Carolina Sunrock. We have consultant inspectors on this project who is Summit Design and Engineering. We also have myself as the project manager for all three of these projects. The consultant for the inspection is all the same for all three of these projects as well. This is the project website, and I'll show you how to get to that real quick. So in order to get to any of these project websites, you can go to the City of Durham homepage. Once you're here, you come up to Departments, and you click, and you come down to Public Works. If it'll load. And then this will be the web page that shows up when you get to the Public Works Department. From here, you'll have the tabs on the left side. You want to come down to Construction, Design, Projects Active. Then on this page, all the projects are broken down into categories. So this one is new sidewalk and trail. These are all of our active construction design or construction projects. Then you'll come down to street repaving, and you'll see that we have ST 324, 325, and 326. Right here, for the sake of this example, we'll go to 326. And on this page is where you can find a lot of the project information that you might have questions on. You'll see the title at the top. Then you'll have the project manager. In this case, it's me. And this is my phone number and extension. If you click this link, it'll take you directly to emailing me at my email for the city. Then you'll have a project description underneath that shows you what the project scope is, a rough project schedule with anticipated dates, and the project status. And then, most importantly, on the right side, you'll see here that we have project information. There is all sorts of information. Some of the most useful information is probably the street list and the vicinity map. Same map as what I just showed you is online on all these web pages. Okay, so back to from cursor. Okay, so that ends our ST 326 unpaved roads. And we'll be taking any questions that you might have for this. Any questions at all on this one? No? We're all good? Okay, all right. So with that going, I guess I will move on. Anybody have anything to say on this before I move on? Clint? No? Nothing? All right. So our next project that we will be going over is ST 324, street repairs and repaving for this year. It is your typical mill and fill repaving operations where we take off 3 to 4 inches of the surface and we put back 3 to 4 inches and you end up with a new road. This is part of our annual pavement management program where I talked about how we want to extend this life cycle of our pavements and save the city money by using two methods and various methods. We select our streets via a pavement condition index, which I'll talk about in a moment, and we select them through an equity lens. So the pavement condition index is a PCI. We have, in 2021, we had a PCI study done to get data on all of our roads and get a condition of the roads from 0 to 100, 100 being the best. And it helps us select and identify roads to repave or preserve for the following years. This work has to be done in combination with ST 325 for us to reach our goal of extending the pavement cycles of these streets within the city of Durham. On the right, you have the vicinity map or the map for the roads to be completed with what they will be receiving in treatment. You can find that on the web page for ST 324. Same way that I just showed you, just select ST 324 instead of 326, and it's on the right. Project information for this contract. Our contractor for the lowest bid was Carolina Sunrock, same consultant, Summit, and same project manager, myself, and this is the project webpage if you would like to go see any most up-to-date information on the project. Anybody have any questions on this project? Yes, sir. Yeah. Here, do you mind if I grab them? Or? Oh, yeah. Do you mind walking up to the microphone? Is that okay? Yeah, that's fine. Okay, I was going to say. Oh, okay, that works, yeah. It works fine.
Hi. I live in the Dover Ridge neighborhood, and the prior PCI survey that was conducted, I think 2016, 2017, our roads had a worse rating than the rating that came on this last one. And I'm wondering if you're using this new one to judge the roads, you know, what value did the last one have if you weren't really relying on that anymore?
So it's a combination. So it's a combination. So we are relying on that one where we're showing a progression. So sometimes, especially if a neighborhood's pretty stable, you might actually see it change because we did change the methodology a little bit in the way we did the new PCI study. So some of the roads actually, you know, appeared to improve when they really stayed the same. So we are, you know, showing a progression. So mostly you're going to show a deterioration, and we're looking at multiple years of the PCI study, and then through that we can show a deterioration curve that will help us predict when these roads are going to need to be repaved.
So, follow-up question. So in 25 years that we've had this neighborhood, we have not had any repaving or any resurfacing at all, while many neighborhoods around us have had it. So we thought, you know, with the ratings that came out a few years ago, where it showed many of them were inferior or less than ideal. I think maybe we had 2 stretches that were green, everything else was less than green, you know, for 120 homes. And now the new survey came out, and all of a sudden it's better, and we've been communicating with the city, and Ms. Tasha, you've been very helpful in your responses, but, you know, I'm the vice president of our HOA, and our neighbors are saying, you know, how are we going backwards? Yeah. So that's why I'm here today.
Yeah. And the answer to that is we get some of these neighborhoods that were built in phases, and so you have an older phase that was built, and so the roads have deteriorated to a point to where we can't do preservation. And the last presentation we're going to do is talking about preservation. So the neighborhoods around Dover Ridge, those were actually, you know, had microsurfacing put on them. So they look really nice because they were in better condition, so they could actually be used. We could actually do the preservation on them. So Dover Ridge falls in this area where it's not in good enough shape to preserve, but yet there's still enough life in the pavement to where it's not ready to be repaved yet. So it kind of falls in the in-between area. So you know, it's a tough situation in that we've you know, preserved the roads around Dover Ridge, but yet Dover Ridge itself did not get preserved. And so when it does hit that point, we will repave it, and then it will start the preservation cycle. So until it dips down a little bit further, you know, because roads have a life cycle, just like a car has a life cycle. And you don't want to replace your car before it needs to be replaced. So, you know, those roads in Dover Ridge, even though they're not pretty, they're still, you know, in that functional class where they're just not, they haven't dipped far enough down to get repaved. Yeah. Do we have any questions about repaving? You can come to this microphone over here.
Hello? Okay. Hey, I had heard that MLK was going to be repaved this year, but it's not on the list. Is that a different project or something?
So MLK is actually going to get a preservation treatment. It's going to get microsurfaced.
Okay.
So it was actually part of last year's project, but the season ran out on us before we could get there. So that's actually going to be one of the, well, I'm not going to say it's one of the first ones because it's a different process. But it will get redone this year, but it's part of last year's contract.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Hey, so I have a bunch of questions kind of floating in my head, but so there's the survey that goes out and people can fill it out for, their road needs to be done. But is there any process in terms of like how people can respond to the selection that gets done aside from this? Like, does it go out for comment or anything similar to like the transit plan or anything? Because I didn't see, all I saw was like the Excel spreadsheets of the list of streets, but there wasn't anything like we're maybe going to restripe this road or something and reorganize the flow of traffic, something like that, which I think could be valuable for a lot of roads that could use repavement like MLK, just to make them a little bit more accessible for other modes of transportation.
So as far as restriping goes, that's done by our transportation group upstairs from us. So when we'll send out, so the list that we have for repaving, we like to say it's a data-driven program. So we're using our PCI studies to help us determine which roads are going to get repaved, and it's a combination between safety and equity. We're kind of putting those together. So that helps us determine the roads, and once we have the roads selected that we're going to repave, we send that list to multiple groups. One of the ones is transportation. We also send it to the Durham Bicycle Pedestrian Board, and they all get together and decide which roads need to be the ultimate decision is done by transportation, and they'll decide which ones get restriped. And then and in fact, MLK is going to get a new restriping plan. So it just depends on their plan, their overall plan of which ones get restriped.
Okay, I have some follow-ups to that.
Okay.
So I guess like using MLK as an example, I know that BPAC had reached out to transportation about the MLK restriping, or I guess they assumed it was a part of this plan, I'm not really sure. But transportation said that it was too late for them to have any like viable input. So it feels as though they're not actually getting to have a say in any of these changes because it's too late in the design phase for their comments to be implemented.
I don't really have a response to that. We send out our list in August, so I don't know when the comments got to transportation. I don't, that's all transportation. So I really can't comment on any of that.
Okay, that's okay. And then sort of another follow-up is, do you know if there's access to those restriping plans? Like for us to view?
We do not have those listed out on the website. We could put those on the website. Yeah, we can do that. That's not a problem. Yeah. Yeah. So like I said, we will send it out to everybody in August. So at that point, comments can be made. Yeah.
And just to tack on to Clint's point is we do use the data-driven approach, but before we select these roads to be repaved as part of our program for next year, we go out and we do field investigations as part of this prior to just saying, okay, data says it. We go out and we check out the roads. Okay. Any other questions on repaving prior to me moving into preservation? Okay. Oh, I'm sorry.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thanks for having us. My name is Leah Wyatt. I'm a resident of Grove Park, and I have my good neighbor, Kenya Gibbs, here with me. I'm a neighbor and also a member of the HOA, so I understand. We have many residents who have commented and asked for us to advocate, the board, to advocate for repaved streets, particularly on Linkside. So Grove Park has two sides of its community. It has been built in phases. One side is what we call Lakeside, that's on the south side of Highway 98, and another part of our neighborhood is what we call Linkside on the north side of 98, Highway 98, or Wake Forest Highway. About 2 years ago, all of Lakeside was repaved. Streets look great. But Grove Park is one community. It's one community. And we would like to know, or would like to share that one, we advocate for this type of programming and projects through the surveys that we participate in. We also advocate through our vote, and we also feel like we advocate through our property taxes. There's about 500 homes on Linkside and just a little bit more over on Lakeside. So in the pavement condition index, according to that index in the map that I found on their website, and it's very well organized, thank you for that. Many of our streets on Linkside are rated from fair to very poor. So we would like to know what your decision-making factors were. I understand you take an equity lens, and thank you, Tasha, for your email. I appreciate that. We understand that you take an equity lens. There are budget constraints, but we would just like some more information on the decision-making factors and the criteria used to pave Lakeside and not Linkside a couple years ago, and decision-making factors for the FY, I believe, FY24 funds that will continue this project. So if you could please address that. And yes, and what information can I take back to my community? Thank you.
That way she has, I was going to say she has follow-ups.
So we were discussing that today. We're going to take a hard look at that next year. It meets the criteria for the paving. It meets both with the equity and the safety. So it's highly likely that it's going to be in next year's paving project because it does fit all those criterias. Depends on funding, of course, and where our funding levels are, and if there's any other direction we get from council. But more than likely, it is. Like I said, because it meets all the criteria when we're doing all of our rating, it's highly likely that it will get in next year's contract.
Was it possible that, like, how was this missed a couple years ago?
How was it missed a couple years ago? Well, a couple years ago when we did the south side, it was a funding issue. We had enough funding to do the south side, but we didn't have enough funding to do the north side. So that's why we stopped where we stopped. And then since then, it's about budget constraints, and we also reevaluated how we were doing, because back when we did the southern part, we were looking at more service requests, and we were using the model of looking at service where we're getting high concentrations of service requests. And what we found is this is not an equitable way to do it. So we redid how we're looking at the paving and how we're evaluating which areas we are picking it to do it more equitably. And then that's why we didn't immediately come back and finish the neighborhood. But now we're at a point to where your neighborhood actually meets all that criteria. So it's more than likely going to be next year.
Okay. And your fiscal year begins in September?
Our fiscal year runs from July 1st to June 30th. So we'll get our new funding in July. We put out our paving project in August, and then we actually start construction in April.
Okay. And is there anything that the community can do to ensure that we are included in next year?
So the question is there anything the community can do to ensure that they're going to be, you're more than welcome to follow up with emails and to advocate. I will say that we do run a very strictly data-driven process. So, we get a lot of requests, as y'all can imagine, throughout the entire city. That everybody wants their neighborhood repaved. So we strictly follow the data-driven process that we have, which is a combination between safety and equity. So we do listen, and when we do get those emails in, we do go out, we do drive through the community, we do evaluate. We take a second look at it to make sure that our numbers are running properly. So it's not like we're blind to what people are saying to us. We do, listen, and we do take into account, but at the end of the day, to be fair and to be equitable to everybody, we have to follow our data-driven model.
Great, we agree. And just for the record, can you tell us which email address we should use?
Mine. Yeah.
And you're
I was
welcome
gonna
to copy
say, I
myself.
saw your email.
Yeah. And,
Saw your email, I promise.
Tyler's email will be up on the screen.
Okay, excellent, thank you. Appreciate it.
Any other questions before I move on? Okay, cool. All right, so we're moving on to ST 325, pavement preservation. So this is the other half of our annual pavement management program. This will be the 5th year that we're doing pavement preservation. Pavement preservation is essentially sealing the asphalt and maintaining it to extend its life cycle past. So a typical mill and fill operation like ST 324, without us doing this pavement preservation, the life cycle typically ends at 20 years. We are working on using this to extend those life cycles out to 50 years, which will save the city a lot of money over the life cycle of a road, and hopefully will mean we'll be able to get to more roads per year, and we won't have to spend as much money rebuilding roads as we can just maintain them. So why preservation? Like I said, cost saving. It is 4 to 5 times cheaper to do preservation than it is to repave a road. It's a faster process, meaning less delays for the community, less construction traffic, less lane closure time, and it extends the life cycle. And this is also an industry-proven tactic to extend life cycles of pavements. It's used nationwide. City of Durham is probably one of the best in the state for its efforts on pavement preservation. And like I said on the previous slides, collaboration with repaving is necessary for this all to work as one and get to the life cycle goal of 50 years like we have. And for this project this year, this is the vicinity map up on the page. This can be found on the ST 325 website, along with all relevant project information, including my email. And let's see. So our contractor for this project is Slurry Pavers. They were low bid. Our consultant is the same as Summit. Project manager is the same. The project website is here on the page. And we also have an additional website called neighborhoodslurry.com for Durham, /Durham, but it's for Durham. This is a website that you can use for very up-to-date and pretty detailed scheduling of what's going to happen within your neighborhood when. There's all the neighborhoods listed, and there's dates associated with them, and then this is the most recent up-to-date as it's updated March 6th. So if you would like to go on there and check out your specific neighborhood, you could probably find a lot of the information you're looking for. And at this point, I will pass it off to Matt May from Slurry Tim Herbst from Slurry, sorry. Okay.
I'm rolling first.
You rolling first? Okay.
Good evening, all. My name's Tim Herbst. I'm in charge of technical education and business development for North and South Carolina. New to the area as of last year, but been in the industry for over 25 years. So I want to take this time to thank the city, Clint, Tasha, and Tyler, and administration for allowing us to partner with y'all. We're excited to again be back in Durham, and I want to show you a little bit about what microservicing and what preservation is, and then why we do it. First off, what is microservicing? So we had the pavers in here, and we're basically taking an asphalt cement, a liquid asphalt cement, and we're creating an emulsion, which means that we're shearing in water into the asphalt, making an emulsion. You do that, you think about getting grease on your hand, and it's kind of hard to get off with water. How do you make that, or how do you get that grease off? You introduce a soap, and in the industry it's called a surfactant. So you blend that water and asphalt together to make an emulsion. We add a latex to it, which makes it hard and stackable, and gives it long life. We combine that with mineral filler, which is typically Portland cement, water, and it all gets mixed into a pug mill, as you can see on the screen. It's brown, very homogeneous. It looks like oatmeal, for all lack of a better way of saying it. It's mixed into the box, and as the paver goes down the road, very similar to a paving operation. It comes out the back end about 3/8 of an inch thick or thereabouts, and the design life is somewhere between 5 to 7 years. That's without doing any preparatory work to it. If you crack seal before it, or maybe do a chip seal before it, which the city does called Cape Seal, that life can be longer than that. Why do we do it? As Tyler alluded to, it costs a heck of a lot less than paving. We're not the expensive part of asphalt is the liquid, so we're using not a derivative of, but a version of it that extends that product out so we can use it more economically and cover more roads, and that's the goal of preservation. Basically, when you see slurry surfacing, that's basically microsurfacing that we're doing for the city. So why do we do it? Is we follow the curve here on the left. You can see the year 11, year 22, year 33, year 44, you're milling and filling, milling and filling, milling and filling. That doesn't include all the reactive maintenance that has to happen with pothole repairing, and full depth repair, et cetera, which drives that cost up, as you can see, to about a little over $200 million. If we use an optimized strategy where you're only incurring little dips in that, then you're not incurring those reactive maintenance type costs, and you're spending a heck of a lot less. That's the goal of all of it. Safety. The reason microservicing was designed also many years ago was to promote friction and get rid of the skidding areas. And there's a lot of studies through the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration that shows that there's 20% reduction in accidents. Canadian studies, reduction in intersection crashes, and MDOT, which is Minnesota DOT, they say 80% reduction in overpass accidents. So microservicing is used for that particular purpose. A lot of people don't think of ecology when paving, but it is a very important thing to talk about, and the carcinogenic effect of paving. And microservicing is categorized as green. So it is very eco-friendly, a heck of a lot less of ozone distraction compared to hot mix asphalt. You can really tell when asphalt's happening because you can smell it. With microsurfacing, you really can't. And that's that reduction in that CO2, and just a good product to use in parks and in cities that are cognizant of their surroundings. And do they really work? And I want to show you what they call a tale of two townships. And this is two townships in a different state. And in 2004, this whole road was milled and filled with 2.5 inches of hot mix, right? So staying with the same picture, the township, which is on the right, wanted to go ahead and do a crack fill and a microsurfacing. The township on the left didn't want to do it. And they basically, over time, it was shown here that after, 2004 to 2018, so 14 years, the road on the right that received the crack seal and microsurfacing basically held up and is very serviceable and still looks really good compared to the road on the right that did nothing, and now it's going to be very expensive to go in and repair and to mill and fill. And so that's the reason for easement preservation, to get more than 20 years out to that 50 years, and this is how these products are used. So I'll hand this off to Matt, and he'll continue with the process.
Does this work? So to talk about the process, and it's, oh, I thought it was pretty loud. To talk about the process, it's very unfamiliar for residents, so that's why we kind of go through it, because as everyone has said, it is a liquid, which means that when it goes down, you can't get on it for a while. So we go through the process, and that way it at least gives people some familiarity. Oops, stop. Is this working? It's working. Okay. Okay, so the process, we do a lot of communication because of that fact, and just to point it out, some of the things that we do, right now there's a direct mail going out that goes to everybody who is within our project area, and that will sort of give people, is there a timer on here? There must be a timer. I'll speak faster. So there's a direct mail. Then right before, we put a door hanger on a few days in advance, so that that's got a lot of information, and especially some tips and tricks we'll go through. If there's an HOA or a community group that we can identify, we always reach out to them way in advance so that they can start getting information out. If we don't have one, we made signs so that we can put signs up at the entrances to the neighborhood with that website so that people can go and figure it out. And then we also have, it's a pretty innovative parking. We took all of the top immigration countries and looked at their no parking symbols. And so we included all the ones that would go just to help people who maybe don't read or understand English to be able to know that something was going to happen on the street. And here's a copy of the direct mail that's going out. Just to go through the dates, so the crack seal is going to start on the 13th. Eradication, patching, and utility adjustments is going to be April 3rd. The microsurfacing itself is going to start April 24th. And then the chip seal portion of it is going to be starting on May 8th. And yeah, and that we're going to go. And we did, and if someone here that was asking about Martin Luther and the MLK. So the MLK, that is scheduled for the first part of May, that microsurfacing, just so you know. And that's also on the website, and it could change, but it'll be updated on there. It's weather dependent. All right, so the first thing is the crack seal. Basically what happens is you have to have a good, it's a liquid, you got to have a good surface for it to go down, and that's why all these things will happen. The crack seal seals the cracks that are 1/4 of an inch or bigger. Anything that's smaller is either going to open up and get sealed the next time, or it's not going to, and it's just going to be fine. Then there's the patching. So we patch localized failures, and that's, of course, any alligator cracking, or if there's utility problems or anything like that needs to be patched, then that gets taken care of. Also the eradication. Now, the chip seal plus the microsurfacing is called a cape seal. The chip seal is kind of the preliminary part. A lot of people have heard. Step closer. Oh, sorry. People have, I feel really weird with this. Okay. You may have heard of tar and chip. It's sort of like tar and chip for the 21st century. The process is improved. The ingredients are improved. But that goes down. The way it goes down is that the work zone is protected by flaggers, and then you have a distributor that goes down the street, sprays a liquid, and then it's immediately followed by a chip spreader, which drops the chips, and then rollers come and put it. The nice thing about it is that is immediately drivable. This is the town of West Point in Virginia. We actually did their downtown in front of all the businesses, the churches, and everybody else. The one thing that you have to look out for the cape seal, or that chip seal part, is that there will be some loose gravel, because they have to put a little bit of extra so that there won't be any bleed through that comes up and gets on everything, and sort of the traffic will go. That works its way to the side of the road and then gets swept up. And it gets swept up good right before the slurry or the micro goes down. And that's usually around 10 days. So now, when the microsurfacing is ready, This is what you might see on your street. You'll see the traffic crew will come out, and when you see the cones and stuff going out, you know they're going to be on your street that day. They also are protecting all the utilities, the manholes, that kind of thing. And then they'll also, at the entrances, they'll put some tar paper down and tape that off to give a nice straight line. So if you see them sweeping the road, because they do that to give a good surface, you know that they're getting ready to get on the street. So this is what it's like going down. You can see that that's the brown slurry there going over a chip to create a cape seal. When it goes down, it's immediately coned off to help keep traffic off of it. And then there'll also be some flaggers around to help people get around. But the big important thing is to not get on the wet microsurfacing. And that's why we put the supervisor's number on the handout, so that if anyone ever gets caught, something happens, I mean, things happen, they can call the supervisor and say, hey, I got to get out. I'll tell you a little secret. In a warm day, in about 30 minutes, it'll do what we call break. And you can get out between 30 minutes to an hour, get out straight across without turning and not damage the slurry or get it all over. I would not cross immediately back up onto your driveway, because that's when you might leave some marks in your driveway. And this is kind of an overview of the operation. It's always good to remember, as you can see here, one lane is always left open. You can see that kind of pulls down. It's coned off where they've already done on that one side there. And so that's kind of how the operation goes. The lanes will be clearly defined with the cones. If you're ever in doubt about what lane to be in, the darker lane is the lane to be in. If it looks a little bit wet or if it looks a little browner, don't go in that lane, go in the darker lane. That's definitely the one that's traffic ready. Something to remember here, if you live in a cul-de-sac, sometimes the best thing for the residents is to do the cul-de-sac all at once, to only go in and not leave a lane open in that cul-de-sac, because we'll get in, we'll get out, and get out of their hair a lot faster. So if that's the case, if it's a smaller cul-de-sac, then they'll ask the residents if they would just rather do it that way, and then we'll do it that way. And then on the other side, you can see the darker side in the brown, but that's when a big cul-de-sac will do half and then come and do the other half. Now, provided we do our jobs correctly and the material is all good, the biggest threat to the quality of the installation of a microsurfacing is going to be the people who live in the community. Less so the UPS drivers, the FedEx drivers, and all the people who would cross the cones. So we always ask for cooperation in every neighborhood that we're in to please stay out of the cones, because it doesn't just protect our guys or the surface, it protects your property as well. When we can't protect it with cones, we'll do what's called sanding, and that is basically we take the same fine crushed stone that's in the mix, gets spread at an intersection, and it protects the vehicle, it protects the slurry, and then you can cross. That is something that can happen in front of your driveway if you do get caught, and you can ask a supervisor. It will stain a little bit though, but if it's swept properly and then it wears in a little bit, you can see it's fine. Now, when the micro is done, the job isn't done. One of the things that can happen, and usually does, particularly around manholes or drop inlets, you can see where, they always kind of do a little dippy-do. Well, liquids want to go where they want to go. So you might get a little bit in the gutter pan, and we will power wash that off. A little bit, you can see up there where it's, a little bit on the side, that's not going to get cleaned off. But when it gets over into it like that, then that gets cleaned off. You might see little piles like that. Those little piles are where they scraped it immediately and left it, and they should be getting that up within 24 hours. If not, there's lots of numbers. Call, we'll take care of it. We're here to do a nice job. And the last thing, as far as all that cleanup stuff goes, is the ravel. So you can think of like a blueberry muffin where, you know, if it's that liquefied emulsion and the stones in it, some of them are at the top. And when traffic goes on it, some of them are going to go down and some of them are going to ravel off. And they'll end up in the gutter pan. So we always found like a couple of weeks to let that process happen. If it's really, you know, needs to get swept up, you let us know. We'll sweep it up early. But we usually go in about 2 weeks and sweep that. A couple of things to remember about asphalt surfaces, including microsurfacing, is that they will scuff on hot days. We see what's called a power steering burn when people come out of their driveway and they go like this. A lot of people see it and they think that it's a deficiency of the microsurfacing, when in fact it's not. It happens to all. This is a hot mix job we did the full depth reclamation on. You can see those burns. The nice thing about microsurfacing or a slurry seal is because of the asphalt contact, it will wear in. You can see here, there's a comparison of just a homeowner's driveway. You know, on the left is, you know, hot mix asphalt. On the right is just a sealer. They're all going to scuff. There we go. So here's a great example of different marring that can occur. You can see like they have these mops that help to smooth things out. You can see sort of the mop drag marks. There's, of course, somebody came out and hit hard or whatever, and those kinds of things. I took this picture because it was the first year that I worked for Slurry Pavers, and I said, I'm going to see if these guys are telling me the truth or not. So you can see 2 months later, you can just see those 2 tire marks. Maybe you guys probably can't see over there. You can see a tiny little bit of the drag mark. And then I was there 6 months later, and everything was gone. None of that stuff that you saw earlier was gone, and everything was smoothed out beautiful. The other thing that you might see and think that maybe people made some bad choices or we made a bad install is this kind of cracking. And that's something that, whether it's hot mix, we've seen it all the time, or whether it's microsurfacing, if there are deep cracks down in that road, there's only one way to get rid of them, and that's to rebuild the road at about 20 times the cost. So if you're trying to look at how to maintain a network, that's kind of difficult.
That's also why we crack seal.
And that's also why we crack. So the beauty of this is you can see, well, you can't see because of the, you know, you've got an existing base failure there. If you have a question and you see something, you can see the cracks even going up into the concrete. So there's definitely something that was pre-existing under there. And then over here, you know, you always see these things, especially down in cul-de-sacs, but other places where around a utility, because they can't compact the base on top of the pipes as hard as they can elsewhere, it'll do a little settling and you'll see those cracks appear like that. And as Clint was saying, the good thing about doing this kind of preservation and doing the crack sealing is that even though that crack will reappear, the road is sealed and protected from the penetration of water destroying the road. So that's always the good thing with crack sealing. And then I'm showing you guys, because transparency, this is the worst road I ever saw. And this was about 5 years ago in another state. Because sometimes you will get some surface color irregularity. I've seen one road in the 5 years, I guess I've been here. One road, one time. But as you can see, if something happens in the environment, the surface color can get a little weird. If trucks are running in the bulb, it'll make that crazy looking pattern. But in a few months, it all sort of settles in and looks good. So that's my story. I'm sticking to it. Thank you. Any questions?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, yeah, my name's Colin Curtis, resident here in Durham. I was curious, you know, there was the graph showing the sort of dips in quality with this preservation process, and I guess I'm wondering if it's, you know, protecting the substrate, the base of the road, what ultimately determines when it dips so low that you have to rebuild the road? And you said it's like it extends the timeline to 50 years, but yeah, just curious. How does that cross over?
So it's a matter of, I don't think that's on.
Might be muted.
So it's a matter of the PCI level. I mean, data point wise, it's a matter of PCI level. So the different bands of PCI will determine what type of treatment we do. So anything above, just I'm thinking off the top of my head, anything above like a 75, we do a micro, just a plain micro. Anywhere between like a 75 and like a 65, we do a cape seal. And a cape seal is the chip and seal with the micro on top of it. And what's the beauty of that treatment is that's right before the curve really dives off. So when the curve really dives off, the road's going to start failing really fast. So once the cracks open up, the water's starting to get in the subbase, that's when your road's starting to really fail. So if we can do a cape seal, like right as those cracks start opening up, we run out and do a cape seal, then it's going to lock that road in, and that cape seal gets down in those cracks and seals it up and keeps it from deteriorating as fast. So then it's kind of jumping it back up a little bit, right? And then after that, we'll probably do, once that micro wears off, then we'll do another micro. And we'll keep doing that as long as the road holds. At some point, the road won't hold any longer. At some point, there's just the asphalt gets to an age where it doesn't hold its structure, and we're hoping that's going to be like year 50. But then also it's like to a road that has reached the point of a cape seal, it's really unlikely that we're going to be able to push that out to a 50-year mark. The ones that we're able to put to a 50-year mark are the ones that were cape seal or were microing when they're in the 80s. So no cracks have opened up yet. We're getting that micro in. We're locking in the oils. We're protecting that road, and it's going to keep a good road good. And then we can keep microing it, and then until it starts cracking. And once it starts cracking, then we can do a cape seal, and then that's when we're extending it. So it's kind of like we have a lot of different treatments. And another treatment we have is reclamite, which we really didn't talk about tonight, but reclamite is the oils. So when they make asphalt, they use oils in the asphalt. So reclamite are those oils that it's made with. So it's kind of like your skin. In the middle of the winter when you're getting dry and your skin's starting to crack, you can take lotion. So when you make asphalt, it's cooked. It's really hot. So a lot of those oils start to evaporate. And when you put it down, you want it hot. So those oils are evaporating. In that first year, in the first 2 years, you're losing a lot of those oils. So at year 2, we like to put reclamite down. It gets those oils back into the asphalt. It keeps it flexible. As long as asphalt's flexible, it's less likely to crack. So that's another treatment we're doing. So did I answer your question? I talked a lot.
No, yeah, I mean, I was interested in the technical,
Okay.
Evaluation and
Yeah.
things like that, so that helped. And then that sort of reminded me of the previous comment about, it is a data-driven approach for which roads and with the equity lens, of course. And I was just curious if either that data or the methodology is also available to the public.
We don't have it written down per se. I mean, we've emailed it out a few times. And I will say the process is changing from year to year because we're trying to refine it. We're learning, we're studying, we're trying to evolve it to be a more data-driven, to be a better process. We're looking at new technology that we can add to the program to help these roads stay good for longer. So we're constantly trying to modify that methodology. Right now we're doing it by hand. So it's me, Tyler, and Justin. Justin, raise your hand. Justin is our consultant with Summit Engineering. So the 3 of us, in July, we're putting our heads together. We're going through our methodology, and it's a manual process right now.
I asked just to say,
sorry.
as we like, for example, in the software world, as we open source and make these sort of methodologies available to the public, often we can find that the public has good ideas and ways to contribute to these methodologies. So I'll leave it there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, so we're always, our ears are open. We're always listening. We're always trying to learn. You know, anytime we get an email, we read through it, we, you know, go and investigate. But, you know, a lot of what we're doing, a lot of what we're learning is, you know, industry practice that has been developed over, you know, I don't know, 50 years or more, probably more. A lot of these techniques started in Europe, and we've taken them into to over here in the USA and trying to modify them to our road systems, because our roads and our soils are a little different than theirs. So, and what we in the aggregates that we have are different, and you know, so we have a different. Our materials are slightly different. So, but you know, we are. There's actually NCAT, a National Asphalt Center. I forget what NCAT stands for. They're through Auburn University. They run a test track. They've actually come to Durham to study our program, and they did a case study on us. We're one of the very few municipalities in the United States that's running a program like this. So we're really kind of cutting edge. We're really trying to, I mean, I say we're cutting edge, but we're using the methodologies that has been established years and years ago. But we're actually following the methodology, and a lot of places aren't following the methodology. They're doing worst first, and worst first doesn't work. Worst first will not get you, you know, as you saw the very first slide, the very first project, well, the second project, when we showed you how many roads we're repaving. You can't repave very many roads with money. And if you saw the second vicinity map, how many roads we're touching with preservation. You know, we can do a lot more with preservation. We're actually, this year, we're spending less money with preservation than we are with repaving. And I can get into why, because it's the way our road networks are. But we're still able to do so much more with preservation, because it's 6 to 1, it's 10 to 1, depending on which, you know, which treatment we're talking about. So we're doing some good things in Durham. Have any other questions? Sorry, if you get me talking about pavement, I'll talk all night long. So you ask me a question, I'll try to keep it short. I'm not very good. Wait, hold on.
But since I started working for Slurry, I really have become an advocate and an evangelist for this method of maintaining our roads, because it is, in my mind, the fairest, most equitable, most intellectually honest way to take care of a system than the old way, which was literally let it fall apart, spend a whole bunch of money to rebuild it, let it fall, which just doesn't make any sense. But if you go to this website called roadresource.org, it's the PPRA, they have all these calculators that you just kind of, I mean, if you get into that kind of stuff, where you can kind of throw some numbers like into the calculators and see the difference that you can achieve with just doing different things, you know, at different times and different cycles. And it's really, and I said before, whether I was working here or not, I mean, my hat has always been off to Durham for the program that they do have, because so many municipalities don't, and they're just falling further and further and further behind. I mean, the United States has rated our road system as a D-. You know, we got to figure out better ways of doing things.
Can you just quickly address your coordination with transportation on road closures and detours and signage and all that? It just sounds like it's going to be a lot of backup in Durham.
So, so the beauty of what we're doing is we don't close roads. The only time well, I take that back. There is one caveat. The unpaved roads, because those roads are so narrow, they're gravel roads, so we do have to reduce access to those as they're paving, because in some cases those roads are like 10 feet wide, and you just can't get a car down while you're repaving. And they'll work with, because they're such short runs, they will work with the residents that live on those streets to make sure that they're working around them. But for what these guys are doing, preservation and our repaving, we keep a lane open. So there are, so very infrequently do we shut down roads. We do our best not to ever do that. Now, as far as, you know, lane closures and traffic control, so, you know, with road closures, we work through transportation and we make sure we notify everybody. When we were just doing our work and closing one lane at a time, we do that through door hangers to kind of give you an idea of when we're going to be there, give you a window. We also put up message boards, variable message boards at the entrances of the neighborhoods or around the work site. We'll do that 1 week prior to the work starting. And then once the work starts, you know, we'll put all the signs up. And then if you need, you know, and they try to be very flexible. Like if the traffic gets really, really bad, then, you know, they will make it, you know, adjust the way they're doing it to accommodate the traffic. So we're not doing a lot of thoroughfares this year. It's mostly in the neighborhoods. So it's isolated to those neighborhoods. And, you know, with what these guys do, it's a quick operation. You know, but, you know, with repaving, it's a longer operation, but they are actually able to, you know, allow cars in and out a little easier. So, did that answer your question? Okay. Any other questions?
Hello. I'm Shannon Robinson. I'm a resident. I did walk in a couple of minutes late, so I apologize if you covered this in the beginning. From what I understand, there's like these two processes. We have the repaving, which is like a much more extensive operation, requires like milling and all this kind of things. And then there's the pavement preservation, which is a little bit more surface treatment level. So these both seem like they're surveying kind of a full block or a full width of a road. And then assessing the need from there. So I just wonder where like small patching or patching of potholes or localized issues are addressed, like in this survey or process. I ask that because from like a big picture perspective, I think this is really great that we're, you know, surveying all of this and looking at these two solutions and the strategies that you discussed, but many of our streets kind of deteriorate at the edges and in more localized conditions where pedestrians or bikers are more likely to be. And that can be very dangerous. So just wondering how like localized conditions are surveyed by the city with relationship to these two processes that you talked about.
Can I piggyback on that?
Sure.
Well, just to say?
Sure.
So I live along a Strange Road, just to say, Barry Radcliffe, I live along Strange Road. I had trolley lanes on mine. I live downtown here. And I agree with that. I feel like the trolley would create some unique problems, and they are very dangerous for cyclists in those downtown areas. So I piggyback on that. How are those addressed from your all's perspective?
So the first part, potholes and patching. So those are usually addressed through Durham One Call. So when residents see them, they are encouraged to call Durham One Call and report those. Our operations group are very responsive to that. They have a very mobile operation. They're not relying on contracts. They're not relying on, you know, they have staff readily available to go fix those issues. And they're very responsive to that. Also, we have, you know, Public Works operations guys all over the city. And as they see things, they're reporting them and getting it fixed as well. So anytime, you know, all that gets put in a Durham One Call or actually into our CityWorks system, and it's all tracked so that we make sure everything, you know, because once it gets Durham One Call, it gets into CityWorks, and then, you know, it's a set process, and then, you know, and we're actually graded on how quickly that gets resolved. So it's pretty fluid and mobile. So if there's anytime you see a pothole, a patch, or any kind of localized pavement issue, I highly encourage you to call Durham One Call, or there's actually an online portal you can submit those as well.
And an app.
and an app, apparently.
Thank you, I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
And then, kind of related to that, though, I guess like the edge, like where asphalt kind of sometimes meets the curb or meets the grass or meets the side
Yeah.
of the road, is that something that y'all are taking into account with that survey, or is that kind of?
Well, it's captured in the PCI study.
Okay.
That is captured in the PCI study. Unfortunately, it's not called out as a specific defect.
Yeah.
So that's in the overall rating of the road, which contributes to when we go and repave it. And and I will throw this caveat out there is we're trying to do, like when we repave for cost reasons and for, and also just for logistics, we want to do a whole neighborhood or a whole area, right? So we might do some thoroughfares around those neighborhoods, but we want to do a whole neighborhood. So what we're doing is we're kind of averaging the PCI of an entire neighborhood, and that's kind of the safety score we're getting. So, you might have like a small road that has a really bad score, but all the roads around it are good. So it's going to be a little bit longer until we get there, unless it's, if it's a true safety issue and that's in Durham 1 call, then we'll assess that. And if it's something we can do about it in short term, we will.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And I didn't really understand your question, sir.
So then I would, so there are potholes along Main Street that get reported very frequently.
Yeah.
And the trolley lines that are almost constantly dug up and, sticking up.
Oh, you're talking about the old trolley lines that got
Go
repaved
down
over that are still
and
there,
perhaps
yeah.
create these really crazy potholes.
Yes, sir.
Sinkholes in Main
Yes, sir.
Street that are causing deadly
Yeah.
bicycle crashes.
Yeah.
And I know those have been reported through Durham 1 call repeatedly, and so I agree
Yeah.
it works, except that doesn't feel like that's
Well,
working.
so
And so
I'll-
what's happening along Main Street
Right.
in that corridor that's very traveled by bicycles, pedestrians, and cars,
Yeah.
but then making it very dangerous for bicyclists who have to, on short order, find a pothole that's not even really a pothole, it's a
Right.
sinkhole.
It's a sink, yeah.
Someone will park in a bike lane,
Yeah.
and that bike lane looks perfectly fine, like Mr. Fry's and Insomnia Cookies, there's cars parked there all the time. You gotta scoot around and go to the left of that, now you're on the main road, and there's potholes there, right?
Yeah. So the response to the question was, there's sometimes people parking in bike lanes and causing hazards and causing the biker to have to go into the,
But it adds to his bigger point.
to his bigger point, yeah.
And then
So
how to
so
report them, which you
specifically,
answered it, but then I like to go
Yeah.
on record then saying, I know those have been reported through Durham 1 call, and maybe it's because they're even a bigger structural problem, and that's really why I was asking you, is they're not just potholes.
Right,
And
right.
maybe they would be a candidate for a new sort of program, but that's why I'm then
Yeah,
asking.
I got you. So the bigger issue with Main Street is it's a NCDOT road. So we can go out and do pothole patching. And like you said, there's a bigger issue there. But because it's an NCDOT road, we can't repave it. That's not, so that's not our road. That's an NCDOT road. And as far as, people parking in bike lanes, that's an enforcement issue. Unfortunately, Public Works, we're not given badges. I can't control that. But, so, but as far as like, we have several roads in Durham that are in awful shape that are NCDOT roads. And, I'm not trying to point the fingers at NCDOT, because, I don't know if the general public knows this, but every other state except for North Carolina, the county roads are taken care of by the county. In North Carolina, all roads that aren't municipal roads are NCDOT roads. So they have like the third largest road network in the United States, and they're trying to do that with a smaller amount of money than, let's say, roads, states like Texas has. So they have a lot to manage. And things like, Main Street, those are tough issues. And we do our best, our operations group does their best to try to help that situation out. But because it is NCDOT road, there's not a lot that they can do. Yeah. Yeah.
Same with it, and you like talking about the surface. So what is then, because to a citizen, that's Main Street.
Yeah. Yeah, I get
It's
you.
literally like, I could throw a rock from here and hit some really bad roads.
Yeah.
How do you guys then work with, and what is there working with other people that are doing then some preservation or looking at the long term, okay, there were trolley lines and those trolley lines do let water travel underneath asphalt, and how are we now going to get rid of old structural problems that should have done? What is the plan to take what is called Main Street for a reason to make it better for bicycles, pedestrians, and
So we can advocate that to NCDOT, and, you know, the residents highly encourage you to advocate that to NCDOT as a priority for them to repave. I know they are doing some work in downtown this year. I know they're doing Roxborough Street. I think they're doing a portion of Main Street. I'm not 100% sure the extent of their project, but I do know they are doing some work in downtown. But I do not know what the extent of that is. But you can go to, you know, Division 5 NCDOT website, and that will give you the rundown on what they are doing. Yeah. But we do advocate, you know, this stuff to NCDOT, just like residents do. But any other questions? Well, I really appreciate y'all coming out.
think we got one more.
I thought you were leaving. I'm sorry.
Hi, I'm Nathan, by the way. Would it not make more sense for us to just, I assume, a legal way to take our roads back from NCDOT? Because in the long term, that would be better for NCDOT and us if we controlled our own roads. Is there no process for that, or does that require us to go to Raleigh and yell at people?
So it's a funding issue. So in theory, it sounds great to take the roads over from NCDOT, but you know, to put it bluntly, the city of Durham does not have the resources to take on all the additional roads. Because, you know, most of the NCDOT roads are multi-lane roads, are larger roads that take heavier traffic, so they need a thicker base. So we already don't have enough resources to maintain the roads that we have. So if then we go advocate to NCDOT to give them to us, they're going to give them to us in really poor shape, which means that we're going to be spending all the money that our small little budget on those roads. And it's really more of a funding issue than it is a, you know, than it is, do we want the roads? We just, you know, we have the resource that we, you know, it's a resource issue. Yeah. Yeah.
And I guess I kind of missed this, but this was the part where we have a general Q&A.
I think we hit that.
I was going to say, I think we
we
kind of
slid
covered
into
it.
that one.
But if anybody has any further questions, please let us know.
Yeah, and also I'll stick around afterwards, and so will everybody else if you want to talk one-on-one. And I really appreciate y'all coming out. I really appreciate the questions. This was a really great. Okay, so the question was Durham able to get any money from federal funding, the CARE Act, and I think there's some raise grants and other things out there. No, we didn't really qualify. You know, some of that, there's very specific ways to qualify for that funding, and you know, we looked into a lot of that stuff, and we didn't qualify for some of it. And it really comes, you know, I will say the city of Durham, we do use a lot of federal funds. We do that in a lot of our sidewalk projects. We have, oh man, I have no idea how many Public Works ourselves, we have 10 federal projects that we're managing at this moment in time. They're more like complete street sort of a situation where we're doing multi-use paths and bike lanes and stuff, adding them to roads. So we have not found we are actually working with a consultant to try to find federal funds for things like paving. There's just not a lot of money out there for paving, like grants and federal funds for that. So we haven't found anything that we qualify for repaving for a road network, so to speak. Well, we are looking. Yeah.
Okay, so you mentioned complete streets and multi-use paths, which brought up another question I had. It should be an easy question. If we wanted more of those, either like sidewalks, multi-use paths, or just better bicycle pedestrian infrastructure, does that go through Public Works or through transportation?
So it goes through transportation. They actually have a really great plan. It's the Durham Bike Plus Walk Plan. Yeah, I got a head nod from Tasha, so I said it right. So yeah, they have a plan set that they actually went through and put in equity, and so it kind of, they follow that plan, and they update it every so many years. So I don't know when I don't know when they're going to update it the next time, but they, so that, advocating that through transportation. But like I said, they do have a good plan. I'm sure that is online where you can look at and see because they actually have the projects ranked. So most of the federal projects that we have come out of that plan, and that's why they popped. Yeah. Oh, Durham, no, I can't say it. Durham Bike Plus Walk Plan. Yeah, and you should be able to find it on the transportation website. All right. Well, if there's no further questions, every time I say that, somebody raises their hand.
I was gonna say.
All right. Well, all right. I do appreciate y'all being here. Thank y'all.